of Stormwater Success 201. First of all, let me thank you for those who have been with us for all three of the sessions. I've received a lot of feedback, and I greatly appreciate that. And then the other thing is that for those of you who are first joining us here this morning, thank you for doing that. And we've been talking about posting the slides. We will be doing that. I'm just not sure whether or not we will end up posting the notes with that until we go over them one more time. So we're at the final stages now where we've talked a lot about stormwater management. And now, how do you get your board and the rest of your HOA on board in being able to work through some of the issues that we brought up, and more importantly, the budgeting issues that support the maintenance of these systems? You can see already that our agenda has a few more lines in it than the previous two sessions, but we'll be going through several of these fairly quickly and then slowing down when we get to the portion about talking about expenses. And that section will primarily have to do with what you might think about, not only for putting together your requests for proposals, but also when you are thinking about how you do your reserve studies and calculating the expenses in there as well. So not all HOAs own conveyance systems, but I've been out to communities that own all of the conveyance systems, and some like ours that is a mixture of both private and public conveyance systems. Just like we talked about non-structural and structural BMPs, there are terms for your conveyance system. They're broken down into open channel and closed channel. And those open channel systems are typically those channels that you now see in front of homes, between the road that's running down the neighborhood and the front yards of each one of the different homes along that road, that's helping to move above the surface stormwater runoff. And then you have closed channel systems, which are those street drains and the drainage pipes that are underneath them, and then some of the inlets and outlets that we've shown in some of our previous presentations. And I'm going to go over those again here in just a second with some pictures. And if you have maintenance required on these systems, this probably is not going to be a self-help job. You're going to have outside professionals come in and do the maintenance and repair. But here's an example of the open channel systems. I'm sure they look familiar for some of you that are here in this presentation. I mean, what you see perhaps in your HOA. And the picture on the left-hand side shows you that stormwater runoff from the street is going into one of these channels, as well as the runoff from the downspouts from the homes that are in this picture, as well as off the sidewalks and the driveways. And it moves into these channels, and then from those channels, it normally ends up in some kind of a yard inlet, like shown here in the middle picture. And then from there, it's going to go to some other place. It's either going to drain off site, or it's going to go into a stormwater management pond. And the picture on the right shows that a modification has been made to this. I suspect the owner has put rock here in this channel. And the reason I say that is because I know if you go to the other homes, you will find that the builder or developer put in vegetation in the middle of these swales and consistently among each one of the different homes to help with filtering and slowing down some of the runoff that moves through this channel. What I would say about this is that within the declarations, it probably identifies this, and not just in the declarations, but also within the community's plats as an easement. And I'm guessing that this is a maintenance requirement from the HOA to maintain these devices. And the HOA board needs to, like some of the other examples I provided in previous presentations, they need to know exactly what's in the declarations. And if owners are making alterations to these devices, they need to talk to them before any modifications are done, because this will be an inspection item. And then finally, on the right-hand side, you can see a more mature channel system, and you see there's a hard time being able to even see the culvert that's going underneath this driveway, because it is filled up with sediment, and You can also see that the channel has flattened out, and you can see where there's evidence of ponding that is here at this outflow. And so this is eventually going to have to be regraded, dug out, and the turf reestablished for it to operate properly, or else there's going to be the potential of flooding and severe storms. So here's an example now of closed channel components. That you've seen these in previous pictures that I've shown you. And in this particular case, all of this right now is owned, is privately owned in our community anyway, and something that we have to be concerned about on recurring maintenance and also potential replacement in the future. And you can already see here at this particular storm drain where there's some settling going on. That's not unusual, you know, from vehicles passing over this, and then potentially some settling from maybe cavities that are underneath the ground there. And so that's going to have to be paid attention to. And I just looked at some rough estimates of what it would cost to repair this, and runs anywhere, depending upon the damage, from $2,500 to $5,000. And if you could take a look, you know, under the ground, this is kind of what the system looks like in this cartoon. You've got your storm drains going to manholes, and water is moving through main drainage pipes. Usually you can see the manhole covers for those in the middle of your street. And then finally, it's going to exit out into that stormwater management pond or some other location, maybe a forest conservation easement or so forth. The components are made of, just like you saw in that previous picture, metal, concrete, and then in our neighborhood anyway, the pipes underground are made of plastic. They are long life components, but just like anything, they can fail. The county, I think, has said yesterday in a presentation that they had spent almost $7 million replacing components of underground systems last year. And the other thing that you should know is that unlike those BMPs that we've talked about, these are not inspected by the county when they come around for the triennial inspection. So what is the routine maintenance that you have to do, whether it be one of those yard inlets or one of those street drains that you might have? Debris that goes down that drain is going to collect at the bottom. And I'll tell you, I've seen a lot of different articles that have talked about the frequency of inspection and clean out on this. One EPA article, although it's dated from 1999, says that you ought to inspect these every year and a half. And when it's time to clean these out, usually it's greater than 1/3 the capacity. That may end up equating to somewhere around 60 pounds of debris that have collected in the bottom of this that is going to have to be sucked out. And if you're going to end up doing this at that time, it's probably a good idea that you have somebody inspect the pipe joints, and if there were any indications in there of sediment having gone into the pipes, maybe doing a pipe inspection. The same article says that you should probably take a look at your drainage pipes every 3 years. So, you know, this shows somebody out there taking a look visually at what kind of accumulation of sediment that you have down there in the storm drains. The right-hand side shows you where a manhole cover has been taken off, and you can do the inspection that way. The pole obviously is trying to measure that depth. Is it really 1/3 accumulation or more? And, you know, you can go to, there is a potential of doing some of this self-help. If all it is removing a manhole cover, you can go to Lowe's or Home Depot and buy one of these hooks that removes manhole covers for $25, and they go all the way up to, you know, several $100s to provide, you know, more leverage and make sure you're not going to hurt your back or anything. But you can pull these off and take a look at these as a self-help project to give an idea whether or not it is something that looks like you need to have taken care of with some maintenance. And a lot of this is going to depend upon your community. You know, how dirty are your streets? What kind of debris do you have going through the streets? Do you have, you know, sediment that's moving through your streets when you have a storm? So the cleaner that you keep your community, the longer that it's going to be between the time that you actually have to take any maintenance on these.
Steve, we got one question this morning.
Yeah.
Jan would like to know, how do you look at the drainage pipes? Aren't they pretty far down?
They are, and that's a great transition, Jan. Thank you, because that's this slide right here. When it is time to have this material cleaned out, first of all, just like we've talked about sediment accumulation in your BMPs, this is collected waste that's come off your street. It's got oil, grease, pesticides, insecticides, anything that has moved off of property into your streets has ended up down, collected, mixed in with the other debris. And so somebody will come out with one of these big vacuums and they will suck the material out of there. And then if you want them to do a pipe inspection, then they will most likely end up putting some kind of device like this that runs through your pipes and takes a look to make sure they're clear. And that's probably only going to be necessary if you've had some indication that there might be a problem, or you were backed up with a lot of debris, and even after they've cleaned it out of your catch basin, it may be wise to go ahead and make sure you don't have blockages that are further down line in your drain. Now, I put down at the bottom line with the county's cleanout schedule. The county does not have a recurring maintenance schedule for those different components of conveyance systems that might be within your neighborhood. So if you're going to do this, then you might call the county and say, hey, I'm going to be cleaning out our catch basins. How about, having somebody come out and also clean out all those that are part of the publicly maintained system? That way, you've reset the timeline for all of your different catch basins within your community. And I haven't checked this out myself, but it just seems reasonable that they might comply with this. And I can tell you, in fiscal year 19, the county did over 4,000, according to one of the reports, of going and cleaning out catch basins around the county. And I already talked about the cleanliness of what's going down your drains, but if you can educate through your HOA in any way, in telling your owners that, hey, don't, toss stuff out into the street, don't pour chemicals, into the storm drains that don't belong there, don't deposit your leaves down those drains that are there along the streets, and then also picking up your dog waste. All of those different kinds of things, again, are going to contribute to longer intervals between having to go and clean out those catch basins. But more importantly, I walked last Tuesday around our neighborhood, went into each of the stormwater management ponds, and that's where you find out what actually went down the drains, because eventually it's going to end up coming out through one of those outfalls there. Okay, I'd like to move and talk a little bit about the inspection program summary. And I'm going to say right off the bat, in the most recent briefing that the chief of the inspection division that goes out and inspects the private BMPs said that about 90% of the BMPs will pass their triennial inspection. So, relatively speaking, there's a pretty good chance that you're going to end up getting through this. But that, of course, is that you've been maintaining the system according to the requirements. But it really is pretty amazing to see just how many of these BMPs there are around the county, over 25,000. And this is going back, from when these were first built here within the county. But 25,000 right now that are on record, and the county owns a little over 1,000, of which most of them are stormwater management ponds. And there's actually two different divisions that conduct these inspections. Under inspections and permits, they've got an environmental inspection division that takes care of all the private BMPs. And then under the Department of Public Works, they've got an infrastructure maintenance division that takes care of inspecting all of the public devices. If you take a look at a report from fiscal year 19, which is July to July for the county, they conducted that year over 7,000 inspections of BMPs. So individual BMPs, over 7,000. They issued 577 notices, which was 8% of those BMPs that they inspected. And they had 8 inspectors. Now, you can imagine that that's quite a workload. When you take a look at just time and distance from getting to one community to another, much less than having to walk around the community and do inspections of all of these, they've got a pretty substantial workload, and they're not going to be able to spend a lot of time for each one of these different BMPs in their inspection checklist. The most recent number of inspectors is right now 7. I know that they're authorized at least 10 inspectors because they were funded for some additional inspectors last year by the county. And this slide shows you that down at the very bottom, there is an Anne Arundel County Stormwater Management Practices and Procedures Manual. And all you do is Google this online. And that is the main policy document for the county about the stormwater management program. And within there is this one section that talks about the inspection focus areas for BMPs. And frankly, most of those items that are on there have to do with stormwater management ponds. And only what I've highlighted there in red mentions non-structural practices. That's because most of these inspections in the past had to do with larger structural devices. And now they've gone to really, at least for new developments, more of a focus on BMPs. And it's also true, of course, for the individual homes that have these devices installed. Down at the bottom of this slide, and I know some of you have been taking screenshots, is the website address that you can go to for the county that will actually show you the checklist forms that the inspectors are using during these various triennial inspections. They're the same for both the public and the private side. And you can see that I put one of my little foot stomper monikers down there at the bottom because I think it's worth your time to take a look at this. You know, yesterday, or our session on Thursday night, we talked about all these maintenance checklists that were available on the WPRP website from the county, and also other resources that are out there for you to take a look at to figure out what specific maintenance tasks might need to be done for your particular BMPs. But I can tell you that if you take these inspection checklists and match them side by side with those other checklists, or even what's in your stormwater management plan for your operations and maintenance requirements, they don't always line up nice and neatly. So I would just take a look at these inspection checklists and make sure that there's nothing substantial that stands out that might be missing from whatever you're going to be doing in regular maintenance there within your HOA. And this is an idea of what one of those forms looks like. And there's not remember, I said that there were 39 different types of private BMPs out there. There's not like 39 different checklists for each one of those BMPs. They've kind of grouped them into, categories. And you have to go up to say, okay, it's a filtering practice, and then what exactly kind of filtering practice it is. Oh, here it is, bioretention area. So this one applies to bioretention, but as you go through all these checklist items, they don't all apply to bioretention. You're still going to have to sort out some that clearly only apply to like an underground, type of BMP infiltration system. So I don't want this to be too complicated. This is what the inspectors use. They know exactly what applies to your particular BMP, but I just think it'd be worth your time to go through these checklists and see exactly what's on there. And as I said already, there will not be any triennial inspection. Nobody's going to come out there and ever tell you whether or not you have a problem or not through one of these inspections, because it's simply not part of their inspection criteria. I've talked previously about using stormwater consultants. We have done that. Our particular contract cost us around $1,500 about 7 years ago or so. We did it before our stormwater management system received its final inspection from the county, just to have a second set of eyes on our facilities. If you've had a homeowner's inspection done before, you purchased a home, this isn't very much unlike that, in that you're not going to get an awful lot of writing in this document. You will get a lot of pictures, and you'll get some comments underneath those pictures of where there might be problems. And then probably at the very end, there will be a summary of all those issues that you need to think about that they've identified. I think that if you were to go out and look at hiring a stormwater management consultant to come look at your system, and when you might do that would be either before you do your reserve report, or if you have any real concerns because you really haven't been keeping up with maintenance, have them come out and do an inspection before you're due for your triennial inspection. Then that might be something for you to consider. And then I would ask whoever it is that you are going to have come out and do this inspection, if you can get a copy in advance of an example report, so that if there's anything else that you want them to do that is not indicated within that report, you can add that to the RFP. We weren't able to accompany the assessor, but we were able to make comments on the first report, and the assessor actually came back out a second time based upon the questions that we asked, and that ended up improving the quality of the report that we had. Oh, one of the things that I want to mention, though, without even having, hiring a consultant, just contact inspections and permits and ask whether or not an inspector might come out and just walk through your BMPs with you. I mean, you don't have to wait for inspection to do this. If you've never had somebody walk through your systems with you and talk to you about maintaining them and problems and stuff that, have been recognized on previous inspections, I would call the county and ask them if they've got time to come out and do a walkthrough with, a couple members of your board. And I think that would be well worth your time. Here's an example. We've had a triennial inspection done now for both our private system and also the public stormwater ponds. And it's not a very lengthy report, at least on your private systems, at least what we got, mainly because if you don't have any problems, what are you going to write about? But one of the things that I do want to point out is that in our case anyway, all of the different BMPs that they inspected were recorded in numbers. And these are called storm ID numbers, and they're numbers that only the inspections and permits section uses when they do their final inspections or acceptance inspections of these devices. They categorize them by storm ID numbers, and you will only be able to get the translation of these numbers to the BMPs that they correspond to by contacting inspections and permits, and then they will provide that translation so that you know exactly what BMPs that they inspected. I'm going to talk about it towards the end of our presentation today, but if you happen to have qualified for stormwater remediation fee credit, then I would also make sure that when you get a copy of this, and you're going to have to request it, they don't send it to you automatically, that you contact the Department of Public Works, the WPRP folks, and give them a copy of this so that your stormwater remediation fee credit can be renewed. If you're unfortunate enough to have more verbiage on your inspection notice than what is here, and that is that you've received a corrective action notice, then there's some things that you need to be aware of. And one of the things that you should probably do is you should contact a professional contractor that is going to make whatever necessary repairs were identified in that corrective notice. Want to make sure they have a copy of whatever it was that you received. And then you want to connect with the inspector that provided that correction notice and make sure that there is absolutely no doubt on what the problem is and what is expected in the way of correction action. And I would try and have obviously somebody from the HOA board there in that meeting to make sure that everybody understands exactly what the problem is and the desired fix.
Steve,
yes.
We just got another question in here, which I think is a pretty easy answer. We are in the city of Annapolis. Does the county inspect in the city?
The answer is no. That is a separate department that does that. And I think that the person, I mean, you can go on site and obviously get this information, but I think the person who is responsible for that division has a last name of Waters, which is appropriate for somebody who does stormwater management.
And Steve, we've just gotten another question from Jan. She says, I am guessing that if we only have stormwater conveyance systems maintained by the county, that we have no relief from the stormwater remediation fee.
Actually, the conveyance systems, other than the open channel systems on the top, don't have anything to do with a stormwater remediation fee. And even if I can say it, the stormwater remediation fee is really mostly based on the amount of impervious surface there within the community. So I'm going to talk a little bit, Jan, as I get here towards the end, I'll talk about the stormwater remediation fee. And if you have any questions after that, then that haven't been answered by that, then I'd be happy to help. Okay, estimating repair costs associated with triennial inspections. We didn't even know when they came out to do their triennial inspection. In fact, they did it a year early, ahead of schedule. So we certainly had not budgeted any money within that year's budget to take care of any possible repair costs. And our reserve account does not allow those kinds of repairs usually, because we're budgeting for the future. I mean, you know, if it's a significant cost, it's unlikely our reserve account is going to take care of it. Again, not trying to scare you or anything like that, but the only way you may be able to pay for this is special assessment. And so you just need to be aware that if you're coming up on these triennial inspections, that you're thinking a little bit, if there happen to be any issues, as to how you're going to pay for it. And special assessments are detailed in your declarations, you know, as far as actually how much you can assess above whatever it is that you're charging for your annual assessment fees, and then also the amount that you can assess. Or, you know, how many, you know, how you go about voting to do this, how much of the community might be involved in that decision. And there is somewhat a sense of urgency if you get these corrective notices. I think it will say in your inspections agreement maybe that you need to take action within 30 days. Neither the county nor HOA boards normally move that quickly. And so just start taking action, acknowledge that you have received the corrective notice, that you're engaging with contractors, that you're working out the funding issues and all that other kind of stuff. Keep them in the loop. And I think that everything will work out fine. The county, however, can come in if you're not moving quickly enough on this. I mean, if you're not doing anything on this, they can make the repairs, hire their own contractors, and then assess the HOA on whatever the costs were to do the repair. And that will go on to your real estate tax bill. Okay, you know, not everybody has got community managers, certainly not the smaller communities, I would guess. But right now, the folks that do most of the certification, and there's different levels of certification for your property managers, are the Community Association Institute. And this type of subject that we've been talking about is not currently in any of their curriculum. And so, you know, it's one of those things that the community managers have a wide range of duties that they have to be responsible for, and they're not very deep in any one area. But across different property management companies, you may find that some that have actually got some particular interest and expertise within this area. And you can actually go onto their website and maybe see, either through some articles that they've published on their blog, or actually within, you know, things that they say they can do, you may see something about stormwater management in there. If it doesn't have that on their webpage, whenever it comes time for you to interview candidate property management companies, You just want to make some inquiry as to maybe how many properties they manage that have facilities like your environmentally site design community, and maybe get some kind of an example from them of the kind of RFPs that have gone out, for maintenance contracts with these providers, or at least just talk to them, get an idea, just how many service providers that they utilize out there, and whether or not they're doing a good job and those kinds of things. But your property manager, particularly the ones that manage a large number of communities out there, probably have got a little bit of insight into this area. And if you've got a community manager, property manager that's working with your HOA board, I would take them out and do a community walk around and educate them with the systems, because they're going to be helping you with facilitating, getting your RFPs out there to different service providers. They should have some visual insight, as to all those facilities that are going to be on the RFP. And they will also be helping you, because this is part of their curriculum, with helping to prepare your budgets to support your maintenance activities, getting your maintenance contracts, through the process of everybody signing them and so forth. And so they can, and we've got a very good property manager right now. They can learn, and they can help you take advantage of some of the other expertise they have to make doing this work a little bit easier for you. Choosing BMP service providers. Part of the vision of creating this course was to bring together people like you that have got these kinds of devices and begin to share information across from one another as to what issues you're seeing, what kind of service you're getting out there, and hopefully by sharing that information, be able to improve the maintenance and the budgeting for this kind of subject that we've been talking about. Anyway, there are no certifications required for anybody that does service above or below ground on your particular systems, not by the state or not by the county. Having said that, there are some folks out there right now who are providing training and certifications for people who could do above or below ground maintenance on your systems. One of those is the Chesapeake Bay Landscape Professional Program, and you can Google that in also, and you'll come up with their webpage. And I think, although I've not been to it here recently, you can actually see what's mostly in the curriculum for those that get certification above ground, and those are typically landscapers. And then twice a year, they offer courses for people to get certified in doing below ground maintenance. And so, and I want to say, I forgot to mention this before when we were talking about opening up manhole covers and stuff. Never, ever should you get into a manhole. There are very strict OSHA requirements on going down into these systems. It's lockout, tagout, I think is what they call it. But you never get into an enclosed system like that underground without the right certifications. So anyway, these people will end up getting those kinds of certifications if they complete this course. And then they provide a list online of all those people who have been certified. Montgomery County, I just added to the slide this morning down at the bottom, a web address that you can go to. They do, in fact, require all the contractors who are going to do either above or below ground work on these systems to be certified. It's not a very extensive program, but there is a program out there. And they also provide a list on that website of those contractors who have satisfied the requirements of that program. You can go to the Watershed Stewards Academy website. They also have a list of service providers on there, but those are not service providers, all of them, who've gone through any kind of a certification program. As I said, the county doesn't have a program at the moment. I've already talked, I think, enough about your property management company, how they might support and giving you an idea about service providers out there. And I've just talked about networking among potential HOAs that have these kind of requirements.
Hey, Steve,
Yes.
can I jump in here for 1 second here? For the Watershed Stewards Academy, folks, we do vet them. So if they appear on our list, we do reach out to them, talk to them about their experience, that sort of thing. So they do go through a layer of vetting to get onto our vendor and contractor list. We've also gotten a couple more questions if you have a quick
Oh,
minute
sure.
here.
Yeah.
Renee asks, does WSA work with CAI to help get the word out about these topics? Through the Audubon Natural Society, I've gotten to write some articles on habitat and native plants and have also submitted proposals for presentations. It would be great to have WSA contribute to content and help improve their curriculum.
Yeah, as far as the CIA piece of this, I have personally reached out to them. We've been a member of CAI for several years now. I'm also personally a member of HOA Leader, and this is a we, as you probably can see, we don't have any CAI participation in this program, as far as I know. They were invited to it, but this would be a big departure to focus this much effort into a subject like this. But I know that they're taking a look at it. I did personally attend a webinar that they had not too long ago. It was entitled "Make America Green Again," and this was a program that was designed again as part of the education program for their property managers. And I can tell you, it did not come close to anything of what we've been talking about here.
I think that's everything. I would just say too, similarly to some of the roadblocks that Steve has run into with working with them to get the curriculum changed, we've run into as well. So.
Okay, and then really, and I did this with another board. I'm sorry. I did this with another board member when we were looking for service providers. We actually went out to sites from our candidate service providers and took a look at what we could see in terms of their maintenance on BMPs. And that really is very helpful. So I'm going to give you just our experience with going out for our very first request for proposal. And there was not a contractor already taking care of these on a regular basis. As soon as they were handed off to us, that was it. We had to start from scratch to go ahead and figure out exactly what we wanted to have done and how often we wanted it to have done. So we were pretty immature in this whole process in terms of experience. But we did use some of the tools that I've already talked about. And we came up with a list of things that we thought needed to be done for each one of our different BMPs. And then we also said, hey, if we wanted to have these other services done, how much would it cost us? And that was part of the contract, but not what we were necessarily going to execute during that particular year. And so you can see that as part of making sure that we did an annual inspection, that there would be an inspection after a storm event of our observation ports. And we required them to come out and make sure that they took a look at each of these different PMBs before offering a proposal. I'm going to stop here for just a second, let you take a look at this, but to help a little bit, across the top is responses from 4 different service providers. And then because the responses were so different to the same RFP, by the way, I went ahead and I put some different categories of where we got responses from them. And then also some additional notes at the bottom. But if you would, just hang with me here. What I'm going to point out is that here at the top, we didn't know exactly what the schedule of visits should be. We just simply said, we want this done each year. And look at the range. We had one contractor say they would only be out 3 times a year. And then another contractor that said that they would be out here more than each month. And so that makes a big difference in just the frequency of upkeep of your devices. And I've already talked a little bit about raking in between storms and picking out weeds and that kind of stuff. So that's really a very key part here. There's a big difference between every three times a year and every month. You have to decide what schedule you want to have. And then the biggest surprise to us was that we had a low bid of $3,500 and a high bid of over $15,000. That just absolutely blew us away. And mainly because we had done this stormwater maintenance consulting contract, and they gave us an idea of what it should cost to maintain this, and it wasn't anywhere close to this number right here. And so that required us to do a lot more investigative research out there to try and figure out why we had such a spread. And at that time, our management company was not one of those that had a lot of experience with this with other contractors out there. So without going through all the numbers, all I can say is that you may, on your first attempt here, find that you have a similar diversity and spread there based upon who it is that you're contacting out there and an understanding of exactly what it is that you want versus what they think they might be able to provide. But that helped us then with being able to eventually decide that this number right here, around $8,000, might have been the closer number. And one of the things that I want to point out here at the bottom is that there's not presently anything that we've been able to find anyway that would give you an idea on average by square foot or by square yard how much you should expect to pay for maintenance of these BMPs. And we went ahead and we figured out that for the total of 9,000 plus square feet of surface area that we have within our BMPs, their particular bid came out to less than $1 a square foot. And that gave us some way of measuring, among all the different contractors out there, how much of a spread we had from that number. Now, I'm not recommending that you use that number because, as I said in previous briefings, your vegetation is a little bit different. That where you get your runoff from can be a little bit different. It could be dirtier than in our case where most of it is going across filtered grass. But this was one way that we had of being able to set some kind of baseline on something that as we made changes, we could be able to recognize the percentage of change more easily. And I will tell you also that when we got a bid back for coming out and cleaning out storm drains, and we didn't have any idea of how much waste it might generate, but the bid came in to almost $120 per manhole or storm drain to come and do the clean out. We had no idea because that same EPA report that I discussed earlier said it would be about $16 per one of these storm drain inlets. Now that seemed a little bit low to me, but that's $19.99 price. But in any case, this has been an education for us as we've gone through and collected these bids to find out how much this stuff can potentially cost us. So request for proposal suggestions, and I have a foot stomper on this, is that it really does require some work, maybe with your property management company, with just simply putting together that maintenance schedule that I talked about yesterday with a spreadsheet, and then just going out there and getting your proposals and seeing what kind of responses you get back from that. I wish that I could provide more help than what I'm providing to you right now, but I have not found a template yet any better than what I'm presenting to you right now. And so try and decide how many times a year you want them to come in and do their performance. And I've got a community, a very established community nearby. They also have their provider come in on a regular basis, and they do that for aesthetics, and it works. The place looks great. Some others I've seen probably are on thinner schedules than that, and you can see the difference in how their particular systems look during the year. And make sure that your service provider has signed up to this calendar of schedule tasks. We have a really great calendar that's been provided by our landscaper. And, you know, they're handling a lot of different contracts out there. And all you need to do is take a look at that particular schedule that you both agreed to in your contract. And you can say, oh, I saw that this week we were supposed to have such and such done, and you didn't see that that was done. You throw the schedule back at them and you say, hey, when are you guys going to get to this? And they go, oh, okay, I got it. And they're back out there checking it. So both of you are checking on each other to make sure that these tasks are being completed in generally the time frame that you've agreed to. And then we ask our service provider, hey, give us feedback, because we're doing this in integrated pest management plan. That you know, if you're seeing any issues out there, plants that don't look healthy, you know, whatever the case may be, give us feedback. Don't wait until the end of the contract to talk to us about this. Annual inspections, you know, we're frankly doing our own annual inspections. We're checking on the contractor's work to see that everything is done, but you may want somebody else to come in and do an annual inspection for you if you feel that that's necessary, just so that you filled that block. I've already talked about manhole and drain cleanout schedule, and also we talked before about watering. But I would definitely, and I've already said this before, do a walk around with whoever it is that you're going to have doing your work, and make sure that you're in agreement on that schedule. You've all put your eyes on the same facilities and so forth. I will tell you, if you do this hard work up front, at least our experience so far has been, after that, the rest is relatively easy. And then on your conveyance systems, this may not be the best slide, but frankly, we didn't even know all the things that might need to be looked at for a conveyance system. So you can kind of work backwards and say to potential service providers out there, hey, give me an idea of what it is that you look at, your inspection checklist for the most part for these different items. Then take a look at those that you think apply to your community and find out what the prices are for getting those particular services done. That can really help shape your RFP a whole lot more effectively. And as I said before, if you're going to do any of this work, contact the county and see if they will come and help you out as well. Help you out in terms of them doing their own work at that time. Okay. You know, I just assume that most communities understand reserve studies and the importance of them and how they relate, in this case, to their stormwater management systems and the replacement costs in the future. But if you're one of those communities that has not done a reserve study, I'd recommend that you go online to CAI, well, actually to the Foundation for Community Association Research. And they've got this website of best practices. And within that website, they've got this really neat PDF file that's free to download that talks about reserve studies. And it really is a great guidebook of things that you should consider when hiring somebody to come out and do a reserve study for you. Josh, did you come on to ask a question?
I did. I was having some technical difficulties. I meant to jump in here at the end of your RFP section. Jasmine asks whether or not your RFP is going to be posted to our website. I think we could work something out if you're open to sharing yours as an example. Maybe it just goes out to participants.
Yeah, let me just make sure that I talk to my board about that. But I would certainly be happy to do that one-on-one.
And then Chris Moore asks, what's the duration of your current contract? 1 year, 2 year?
1 year. 1 year. Now we could change that. You know, landscaping contract is a 2-year contract, but and our provider has done a pretty good job, reliable job, and so, but at the moment it's for 1 year.
And we just got a question coming from Mary. Will all of these suggested resources and website addresses be posted for us after the session? And we're going to work out a way to get all this to everybody, whether that's an email with links to you guys directly or whether it's going to live on our website. Steve and I will work that out and we'll get you updated here.
So one of the things that I would like to say with our experience with reserve studies, and we've done 2 of them now. We didn't, first of all, inherit one from the developer. We went and did a level 1 study first, and that's the complete reserve study. And then we have since done a level 3 study, which is a follow-up study after a few years of wear and tear on our systems. One of the things is that whoever you are considering for your reserve study, I would absolutely make sure that they have experience in these kinds of stormwater devices and estimating future expenses. That is not the case across the board for these particular companies. And the other thing is the reserve specialist analyst that will come out and do this survey of your property is not an engineer. CAI, once again, has a certification course for these individuals, but they're kind of like your property manager. You know, they're fairly wide in scope of what they're taking a look at, but not very deep. If you want an engineering analysis of your system, then you're going to have to hire someone other than probably your reserve analyst to come out and provide that kind of detailed information for you. So the one thing that we did make sure that we did before we contracted was to pull out our stormwater management plan, make sure that they had those plans so they knew exactly what was above and below ground. I think that definitely helped with the feedback that we got, on what the future costs of repair and replacement would be. And then one thing that they did most recently in our reserve level 3 study was that they actually, instead of waiting until 20 years or whatever with a lump sum for repairs, we've actually got some intervals in there where there are some expected repairs to be made. I think it's on a schedule of about every 5 years. And then the other thing is, if you can, accompany the inspector during the assessment of your different systems to make sure that you're both in agreement on just what is part of those individual BMPs. We were also fortunate, with our particular company that we did business with, is that they allowed us to take a look at the draft report. We did that, provided a number of questions back to them, which they answered. And it, again, turned out to be a much better report as a result of being able to have that interaction with one another. One of the challenges that I found, and I know we're getting here towards the end of the hour, so I'll pick it up just a bit, but it has been really tough, at least for us, to find information on how long these systems will last. But what we have found is that generally, if they are maintained properly, they're expected to last, somewhere 20, 25 years, or maybe even more. And so the importance of doing maintenance is repeated time and time again in some of these other different research efforts that we've done. And so, but at some point, this is what your reserve schedule is going to be based upon. It's going to come out and it's going to say about this amount of time, you should have this amount of money within your reserves in order to take care of these different facilities. And a question you should be asking, of course, is, so how many different facilities might I need to be taken care of? Because they were all built pretty much at the same time. If you've got a larger community, there may be a little bit of a distance of a year or so between when one was constructed and another one. But for the most part, they're all going in around the same time. And the construction date isn't necessarily the same date that they were actually inspected and approved by the county. They go in, some of them right at the very beginning of the development, and they may have a couple of years of wear on them, before they actually get inspected by the county. So being able to back up that date, if you have any awareness of that, and I showed you at least one reference. If you go to that county website, the application at WPRP, it will show you when the plans were approved for that particular development. That may give you some kind of an idea, as to when they might have been built. And then, of course, I've talked about this several times again. The lifespan of your device is probably going to be affected by where it's getting its stormwater runoff from. Is it mostly clean runoff or is it dirty runoff? And that's going to affect the amount of time that the lifespan of that particular device. So for sediment removal, that probably will be your messiest expense if you've got a stormwater pond that is eventually going to have to be cleaned out. They're going to have to bring in some heavier equipment, and they're going to also have to cart this stuff off to some other off-site location. So, this gives you some idea of those costs, but obviously we're looking into the future, and so this is going to change out there. But that will probably be one of your larger expenses. And then this is a foot stomping slide. We were very fortunate enough to be able to find out that there is an engineer's estimate that is included within the grading permit bond that provides a complete list of all the materials and the cost of those materials that went into building the best management practices and also the underground conveyance systems. And this form in the middle is one that can be found on the inspections and permits website, and it shows you generally what has to be provided within that grading permit bond. And so even though this information is somewhat dated, I think it was compiled around 2008, so a couple years even before the community was built, but it gives you a baseline information to what it cost at that time. And then, I mean, no surprises, it's not going to be any cheaper when you have to go out there and replace it. You can add inflation on that. I mean, you can already see how this matches against whatever you might have gotten in your reserve study report. Now, I realize up to this point, I have thrown a ton of stuff out there, and hopefully, every one of us are going to go out there and only pick the things that are most important right now. But at some point in the future, you may want to come back and take a look at this and say, oh yeah, now I recognize this. I maybe need to integrate this within the things I need to consider for my stormwater management program. And then finally, at least in our case, every homeowner in their new sales package had a disclosure statement in there from Maryland. Included within that was this draft budget from the developer. It at that time included, what units had been built, and then what the projected costs would be to the association and annual assessment fees at build out. One of the things that we saw when we took a look at this budget was that most of the expenses in our case associated with stormwater management had been segregated into the townhouse area. We have a mixture of townhouses and single family homes. All of our best management practices are around the townhouses. They're the ones that have got the private roads and the gutters and the sidewalks and all the other stuff. And so they were picking up all of the costs of maintaining not only the systems right now, but also the replacement costs in the future. And that's what's shown here for the reserve contributions. We have since modified that. We consider that those BMPs need to be maintained by the association. Aesthetically, they help out with property values and stuff. So we've smoothed out the burden of maintaining those. But I'm already aware of other communities out there who have similar divisions of contributions to maintaining stormwater management systems. Just need to be aware of that and figure out, what you're going to do within your own community if you're one of those. And one of the things that we have not been able to do is figure out how our expenses align with anybody else's in terms of maintaining these systems. And we have not, the county can't tell you that information either. And I understand, again, every community is not the same. But here's what this particular year we are paying. $800 for our stormwater remediation fee. We do have a 50% credit on that. Our annual planned maintenance right now is about 8,300, and that does not include at this moment exercising any options. We budget again $1,500 in general repairs. Often that will end up going to some issue associated with best management practices, and then also roughly $6,000 for landscape enhancements, and that's remediating turf where we've had erosion, replacing plants, taking care of pests, and so forth. And then every year putting $5,000 aside into our reserve account funding. So it ends up being about 11 to 16% of our budget right now. And it absolutely does vary by year because we also have a list of unfunded requirements. We say these are the other things we would like to do if we had some additional money. And so we just set those aside for perhaps next year's budget. One of the things that I said we would come back to is this HOA stormwater remediation fee. On your real estate tax bill every year, you've got a line item in there that shows what you're paying for your remediation fee, and you can get up to 50% credit on that. And I'm just going to go right here. If you've not seen one of these before, sometimes if you're a new development, they're continuing to go to your developer, or they're going to a previous management company if you are a more established community and you've been changing management companies. But this is the web page at WPRP. Your request has to be submitted not later than the 1st of October to be able to be included in the next year's credit. And processing time is roughly 90 days. And, you know, there are a lot of things that may go along with this application. If you are a relatively new community, the county already has most of this information. What I took from this is already posted right here at this particular address. But what I would tell you is contact Sally, because Sally will work with you. She'll discuss with you how new your community is and so forth. She'll tell you what you really need to give her in order to help make this decision. And once you get this credit, the renewal is not required, but you do need to show that you're still complying with all of the requirements, and that means really just submitting a copy of that triennial inspection agreement. Some parting advice. This has really been a thorn in our side in trying to keep up as we change management companies in ensuring that there is a record of our correct HOA address in the system. And so I'm just going to say, take a look at that address down at the bottom of the page. It will take you to the site where you can officially make your address change with the state, with the Maryland State Department of Assessments and Taxation. And not only will it update the information for your real estate tax address, but it also updates the county's address system. They use the same source to ensure that your water bills get to the right place, that also the inspections and permits, folks know who to contact and that kind of stuff. It really is worth your time, and it's a foot stomping slide that I suggest that you follow up on. And then, you know, taking advantage of education and training opportunities out there, I think is something that you should consider. There is the Stormwater Success course where you'll be able to interact with professionals. I'm not one of those, but those folks that do, in fact, from both the county and also from people who do the work on these systems, will present material and you can ask questions from them. And that course is held twice annually. As I already said, Josh is the one who is responsible for the curriculum on that and making all that magic work. And they will also go out and do tours of communities. I was actually in this group right here when we went out and saw this particular BMP being constructed. And then you know that I'm doing this as a project right now for the Master Steward Certification Program. And that's where you'll get a little bit more in-depth look at stormwater management. 12 sessions that run from January through May. And Josh, are they still accepting applications for the next class?
We are. We actually have a few info sessions. I'll put a link to that into the chat, and you can get some more information with that. We have some upcoming sessions, and you can get more information there.
Okay, and then this one I definitely take a screenshot of, or once it gets posted, because these are all great folks. When you've got questions about any one of those subjects that I have on there, these are people that present right now to that Stormwater Success Program, except for Tracy Reynolds up there at the top. And so I think that, there are people out there when you've got concerns that have got the expertise and everything that can maybe help you with your issues. And you're not alone. These represent some of the communities that I actually have gone out and visited. They are oriented heavily towards the eastern side, north side of the county, because that frankly is within driving distance of me more easily than the others are. But there's a lot of stuff going on. I was just out yesterday off of Route 3 at one development, and there's huge amount of BMPs being developed in those areas out there where new construction is taken, and New Rivers and other complexes out there. And the whole idea of this, again, I'll contact you after this and I'll say, hey, would you be willing to get on a list, to begin sharing information among one another? I think that will help out, because right now, most of these communities are very new. They're learning about all of this for the first time. And I think sharing information will bring everybody's education level up. So I'm sorry, I've gone over 5 minutes here, but here is a summary of those foot stompers. Again, more than what we had in some of the previous sessions. But if you take a look at each one of those different slides here at the very end that were foot stomping slides, pick and choose from those on what things that you think you need to get more educated on. And I do think that it's going to be worth your time. And then I'd also like to say that probably on Tuesday, Josh is going to send you a feedback form. And, whatever you say on there will help me pass this project. So just think about that when you submit the forms. But I really do appreciate your time, and anything that you think might be helpful, to making this better for HOAs out there. Certainly would be interested in those comments. Okay, do you see my face again, Josh?
Yep, I think we're good. And Steve, tremendous job. I just, everybody, silent round of applause if you can. Thank you for all your hard work. This has been a really great seminar. Steve, I know we're a little bit over, but are you planning on staying just a couple more minutes? See if anyone has questions. I apologize
for those people that we went over on, but of course, if anybody would like to stay a little bit longer, I definitely would be willing to do that.
Okay.
And if you want to leave, please leave. But thanks for your presentation, for your attendance rather. Okay, so Josh, do you have anything in the chat room right now?
No new questions, so I think we're good.
Okay, does anyone else have any questions or comments? And you have to unmute yourselves probably if you do. Bill, glad to see you on board. I'm just now seeing who's actually on the seminar here. Pat, good to see you. I see two Pats, Pat Lynch.
Glad to be here.
I'm sorry, the Pat or Bill. Yep.
I just said glad to be here.
Anyone?
Well, I'll just say I found this very interesting.